Hello friends, welcome to the Seated Scribe, a channel where we discuss pens and writing, and I am Rudrashish Dotto. For today's episode, we revisit the house of Sheaffers to examine the Sheaffer's 300 series, which comes in several colors, and the pen that I will be reviewing today comes in a gold trimmed fine nib version of brushed chrome. So, without any further delay, let us go to the pen. Well friends, Sheaffer 300 is marketed in this part of the world in the usual Sheaffer boxes like these, which contain the typical Sheaffer logo with the Sheaffer branding and its year of establishment. So once we open the box, we get this, the pen. Then we are given two cartridges, which I will be keeping aside, and a maintenance cum warranty manual. So this is roughly it with regard to the box. Let me keep it aside and look at the pen. Now this is Sheaffer's 300, and the pen that I have is in brushed chrome. It feels very robust and metallic with gold trims and a fine nib. Let me examine the cap first. Well, the top end of the cap is flat with straighted sections, which leads to the clip in one metallic continuity. The clip is very finely spring loaded. We see as we pull the clip, this entire section up to the back moves upward. It's neither too rigid nor too loose, and the clip is typically straighted. It's a slit clip with the characteristic white dot of Sheaffer's. Interestingly, one way in which Sheaffer 300 series can be differentiated from the Sheaffer 100 series or the other series of pens of Sheaffer is that Sheaffer 300 has a slitted clip which is fairly long. In fact, the longest slit is in Sheaffer 300, and the other characteristic feature of Sheaffer 300 is this metallic band at the end of the cap, which is the widest. Sheaffer 100 series has a band which is nearly half the width of this. So this is one feature. The other feature of Sheaffer's 300, which is again very rarely found among fountain pens, is the cap weighs more than the pen. So this is something very interesting which we will see as we weigh these two items up separately, but that is how it is. Now let me turn to the cap. The inside of the cap has, let me see if I can focus it for you. The inside of the cap has a plastic jacket, a white plastic jacket, which actually helps in click shutting the pen and making this nib section absolutely airtight, so that the pen can begin writing even after long days of non-use. So this is one aspect of the cap which I find interesting, and the cap also has a screwed in mechanism whereby this section perhaps is screwed to the body of the cap. If I can focus it for you, you can see a cross screw which is fit into the cap, which secures the body of the cap and the metallic finial. So this is another interesting aspect of the cap of Sheaffer's 300. Now let me keep it aside, and let me see what is written in this band. Well, it's Sheaffer and nothing else. So that is what is written, Sheaffer. So let me keep the cap aside and look at the pen. So I find this section, the gripping section, to be made of black plastic. It's shiny plastic. The nib is the typical Sheaffer design nib. It is two-toned, and in my case, since I have opted for a fine nib, Sheaffer 300 is marketed in either fine or medium, and in this case I have a fine nib with that characteristic F inscribed on the nib. The feed is double straighted, as you can see, and it is made of plastic. One reason why Sheaffer designs these feeds as double straighted is because double straighted feeds usually increase the supply of ink from the converter or the cartridge to the nib end at a rate of almost 1.5 times than a single straighted feed. So this is what will make this pen comparatively more wet than the usual fine nibbed pens. So this is one aspect of it. The gripping section tapers outwards slightly, then there is a step up here which leads to the barrel of the pen. The other end of the barrel is flat finial, and there is a step up here. It's a very smooth step up at this end which will hold the cap in place in case one can wish to write posted. So this will securely fit the cap. So this is an interesting aspect of the barrel of Sheaffer 300. Now once I open it, I get a converter that is proprietary Sheaffer's converter. I'll be using this converter to fill up this pen with ink when I take a writing sample. So this is typical Sheaffer's proprietary converter, and the barrel section is solid metal. As you can see, the threads are metallic too. There is a gold band which overlays the inner steel chrome finish, giving this pen a very, very solid and a no nonsense appearance. So this roughly is the pen. Now I'll be taking a weighing sample before I fill this pen with ink, and then we will go to the writing sample. So now let me weigh the cap and the pen. switch it on. Yes. So friends, the cap weighs 23.32 grams. As you can see, the pen weighs minus the ink and the cartridge 18.26. So the cap is actually around 5 grams heavier than the pen. So this is something which we usually do not encounter in the world of fountain pens, that a cap is outweighing the main body of the pen. Nevertheless, this is an interesting feature. This will obviously have its downside, which I'll be commenting on when I take a writing sample. So now let us fill up this pen with ink and see how the pen fares. Well friends, I have filled up the pen today with Waterman Mysterious Blue. So let me see how the pen writes in 100 GSM paper. Now interestingly, I'll be using the pen unposted for two reasons. First, the length of the pen without posting is absolutely perfect to a medium sized hand. And the second thing is, since the cap is heavier than the pen, this pen without question weighs backwards once it is used posted, because the cap is heavier than the pen. So there is this tendency to, as you can see, this pen is heavy backwards while posted. So this is one aspect of the pen which may be uncomfortable for a few users who habitually use the pen posted, but I would rather use the pen as it is without being posted. So now let me see how the fine nibbed version of the pen works. Well, the pen writes very smoothly. And it is wetter than the usual fine. And the reason why it is wetter than the usual fine is, as I have said, this feed is double straighted, which actually marginally increases the flow of ink from this part to the nib, and that is perhaps the reason why the pen is wetter than the usual fine. As we can see, both the upstrokes and the downstrokes are wet. It is not very wet, but it's wet, and the nib is very stiff, so there is no scope for a nib width variations of the calligraphy type. No variations of any sort with regard to the nib width, even under significant pressured writing. So otherwise it's a very, very smooth writer, but at the same time I do get a feedback which is not scratchiness while I am using this fine. So in other words, the feeling of writing with a Sheaffer's 300 in the fine nib is a balance between a hydroplaning, where the nib or the tip of the nib glides over the paper, leaving no feedback or friction of any nature, and scratchiness. So this is a balance between hydroplaning and scratchiness. We just tend to get that feeling that we are moving something on paper. So that is it. This is what I would call a rather pleasing feedback, the sensation that many of the fountain pen users actually look for while writing or using a fountain pen. So this is Sheaffer 300 in brushed chrome color with gold trims in the medium nib version, in the fine nib version for you. Now, well, whether I would recommend this pen as a daily writer, definitely I would. And since this pen is in the lower mid range of fountain pen users in the fountain pen price, I would recommend this pen under usual writing circumstances as an everyday carry. So this is it for those of you who may be loving a pen that looks girthier, with a no nonsense air, which is heavier, which is engineered very well. I would recommend Sheaffer 300. So this is all that I have to tell you with regard to this wonderful pen. Thank you for watching. Keep sharing, subscribing, and I'll be back with another fountain pen review in a few days. Stay safe, friends, and goodbye.